In this lecture, we're going to look at 7 words connected to government. And here are the 7 words: autonomy, constitution, coup, dictator, monarch, legislature, regime. And your first word is autonomy. Autonomy. In government, autonomy is when a country or a region controls or governs itself rather than by an external power. The word comes from, here you are, auto. At the start of the word, auto means self. So self-government. For example, Catalonia demanded autonomy from Spain. The rebels stepped up their demands for autonomy. You can also have personal as well as political autonomy. So, for example, each of the managers enjoys considerable autonomy in their decision-making. So here you have the chance to make your own decisions, to control your own actions. So you can have personal autonomy. Autonomy from something you can have. Autonomy of someone or something. You can have autonomy in doing something. And considerable autonomy is another very common collocation. So the word autonomy, you can turn it into an adjective, autonomous. Autonomous. So you can have an autonomous region, an autonomous individual. And some synonyms for autonomy: self-government, independence, self-determination, self-rule, sovereignty and freedom. And your next word is constitution. Constitution. The constitution of a country or of an organisation is the system of laws, system of rules that states people's rights and also their duties. So, for example, the transitional authority will draft a draft constitution. The constitution protects civil liberties and freedom of speech. You can amend the constitution, adopt the constitution, ratify the constitution, and you can have a new constitution. These are common collocations. And of course, constitutions is the plural. Constitutional, you can have as well an unconstitutional. So something can be unconstitutional. So those last two, constitutional, unconstitutional, are adjectives. And some synonyms for constitution: legislation, code, charter. Here's your next word: coup. Coup. When there is a coup, a group of people seize power or control in a country. They get rid of or overthrow the previous government. The word actually comes from the French phrase coup d'état. Coup d'état. So, for example, they were imprisoned for their role in the coup. A military coup took place in Egypt in 2013. The rebel generals staged a coup to oust the democratically elected government. So here you have coup d'état, military coup, a coup attempt, and an attempted coup. And some synonyms for the word coup: revolution, plot, overthrow. So note with the pronunciation of coup, you don't say the P, you don't sound the P at the end. Coup. Here's your next word: dictator. Dictator. A dictator is a leader of a country who has complete control of the country, all on his or her own. Some dictators seize control using military force, and they sometimes maintain control through cruelty, through oppression. This is a statue of Julius Caesar, who became dictator of Rome. Another famous dictator more recently was Adolf Hitler. And the word comes from the Latin, and here at the start of the word dictator is dict, which is from the Latin verb which means to tell. So if you dictate something, you tell somebody what to write. So a dictator tells people what to do. Some example sentences. The country descended into anarchy when its dictator was overthrown. This brutal dictator has blood on his hands. Popular protests eventually forced the dictator to flee the country. So you can have a brutal dictator. If you have a nice dictator, you can have a benign one. A benign dictator is a harmless dictator, this means. You can oust the dictator and a former dictator. And you can turn the word dictator into dictatorship. And some synonyms for dictator: despot and tyrant. These two words show that the dictator is cruel. An autocrat is a more neutral word. Your next word is monarch. Monarch. So a monarch of a country is the king or the queen of a country, or sometimes the emperor or empress of a country. And here is the monarch of the United Kingdom, the current queen. So monarch. So the CH there makes the K sound, monarch. The start of the word mon means one. Again, it's Latin. Mono, it means one. So it's the one leader. I think it's Latin. It might be Greek, actually, mono. But it means one leader. Australia is an independent country, but still has the British monarch as head of state. His attempts to rule as an absolute monarch provoked a rebellion. So some common collocations: absolute monarch. An absolute monarch is a monarch that has complete control, almost like a dictator. Whereas a constitutional monarch, like the British Queen, has to rule within the constraints of the Constitution, within the law. A reigning monarch, a ruling monarch mean exactly the same thing. And monarchy as well. A monarchy is when a country it's a country that is run by a king or a queen, and a monarchist is someone who supports the idea of a monarchy. And some synonyms: king and queen, emperor, empress. These are really the examples of a monarch. The closest synonym is sovereign. Sovereign. Next word is legislature. Legislature. The legislature of a country or a state is the group of people who have the powers to make laws. And here's a picture of the beautiful Hungarian Parliament building in Budapest. It's home to Hungary's legislature. And the word again comes from Latin. Legis means law. So the proposals before the legislature included laws against drug trafficking. The legislature passed a bill to permit a referendum on the Constitution. The USA has a bicameral legislature. The third sentence, bicameral, means there are two bodies or two houses of parliament. So you can have a state legislature, an elected legislature, The legislature approves things and passes laws. And somebody who is a member of the legislature, is a legislator. And legislation are the actual laws passed by the legislature. And some synonyms: parliament, house, chamber, law-making body. Here's the next word: regime. Regime. A regime is a fairly negative way of referring to a government. So if you refer to a government as a regime, you don't like it. You're critical of it because maybe it's not democratic. Regimes often have dictators or military governments. And it's connected with the Latin word for king, which is rex, which here is changed to reg. But regime. Notice the pronunciation of the G is the J sound, regime. So the fascist regime of Germany collapsed at the end of the war. He was imprisoned and tortured under the military regime. The new regime immediately imprisoned opponents and stopped freedom of speech. So we often talk about a new regime or a previous regime, a military regime, an authoritarian regime. And some synonyms: military government, administration, just government, or dictatorship. So there are your 7 words for government: autonomy, constitution, coup, dictator, monarch, legislature, and regime.